Monica. She's going to use 3 stories from her collection, and I think you have probably read them by now. Monica, over to you.
A very good evening to this terrific group of book lovers. I mean, one really, thinks of people getting together and reading books and discussing books. And we are passing through trying times, and still, I mean, you are a cohesive group. And I want to specially thank Mrs. Mohini Court and her so very supportive husband, Mr. Court. Not only supportive, I think he's really proactive in this whole thing. And lovely, and she's been lovely being here. Thank you so much. And I also wish to thank Rekha, my very good friend from Delhi, who has been kind enough to introduce me to Mohini. I'm really glad to be here, to be speaking to such a nice group, erudite group, well-intentioned group. Now, my book is called The Other Woman, as you must have seen. It's published by Harper Collins. Now, people, actually, the whole thing started with my research topic of the impact of underage marriages on the Human Development Index. By the way, I was a professor in economics, so I would, sort of veer my talk around certain, terminologies in economics, though Mohini has warned me, Monica, do not make it academic, make it simple, because we want to enjoy the topic, and I'm sure I'll bear that in mind. But nevertheless, what I mean to say is that this topic of the other woman, I mean, there's a pun on the word other. Other meaning another woman, and other actually the concept started with a French feminist of the 19th century, Simone de Beauvoir. Am I audible? Is my voice getting across? Yeah. So she started this, concept. She said, beautifully she's defined this. She says other means that men, there was a kind of, if you remember, in the Victorian era, there was a gender war. Men against women, and that is to a large extent continuing now. We still live in a patriarchal society, and there's a lot of social conditioning. There's a lot of discrimination against women, which is called the apartheid. I call it the apartheid of gender. Now, coming back to Simone de Beauvoir, the French feminist, very well-known French feminist, she said that men considered themselves to be absolute, and women were the other than the absolute. So you can make out that there's a kind of discrimination between man and woman those days. In fact, another more interesting fact, which I want to bring to your notice, I'm sure some of you must be knowing already, that is there's one lady called Ipsita Chakravarti, who also spoke. Now, you must be wondering that why is she not talking about the book directly? The point is, this kind of context, building up the context and presenting the context, is integral to the narrative. It is really integral. Unless I sort of explain to you the background, the context in which it is being taken up. And this book, I call it a book with a purpose. In fact, there was another book of mine, her story so far, Tales of the Girl Child, on the condition of the girl, the socioeconomic status of the girl child in India. And that was also an interface between socioeconomics and literature. Now, why the interface? What was the purpose of the interface? The point is that people, it has to, this economic factor, the socioeconomic reality that exists in our society has to get across to people. And stories, I mean, the fiction writing is a form of art, which can really articulate this socioeconomic status. In fact, fiction reflects the socioeconomic status of the society beautifully. So the socioeconomic status that exists in society, in the Indian society in particular, is brought out by these excellent fiction writers of India, with famous fiction writers like Mahasweta Devi, Mrinal Pandey, Ismat Chugtai, and what have you. I mean, I have taken 16 stories to depict this socioeconomic fact through literature. It's a kind of soft peddling of the socioeconomic status or the narrative which we have taken up. That's in hand. So othering of women is, I mean, it has existed for long years. And Ipsita Chakravarti beautifully, I mean, very interestingly, has, she's called the only practicing witch of India. It's very interesting. She had come to our college to lecture to the students about the witchcraft, and she's called a benevolent witch. Benevolent witch in the sense that, as you most of you must be knowing, that women have been dubbed, women have been sort of, you know, atrocities have been committed on them on the ground that they practice witchcraft, and because of their goings, I mean, whatever they're doing, the society is adversely affected. People die, people are killed, and for no reason, people die. And these are kind of things that are attributed to witches. Now, she is the savior of witches. She has, in fact, done a lot of work in Haldia, West Bengal, to save this kind of maligning of maligning, not only maligning, inflicting pain on the falsely accused women. So, so when she came to our college, she was lecturing to the students, and there was a huge gathering of young girls. They were all sitting and enjoying her talk about the witchcraft, which is called the Wicca, practice of Wicca. And she said, she started her talk by saying that when witches of the world got together in Grand Canyon, in the middle of Grand Canyon, witches got together, and she was there, she was one of them, and they tried to test their Wicca craft, their witchcraft, to raise a storm in the middle of the Grand Canyon. So then the students got really interested, and the young girls said, "Oh my God, this is terrific." So who would you call, ma'am? How would you define a witch? Who would you call a witch? She said, "You are a witch." And this girl who asked this question was a beautiful, young, intelligent lady. So she was terrified. I mean, she said, "Ma'am, why did you say that?" She said, "Because during the Victorian era, any intelligent, good-looking, beautiful woman was, you know, dubbed as a witch. Maybe because men felt threatened." Now, I mean, this condition does not exist that much. It's not a question of men against women. In fact, to bring about these changes, to bring about the betterment in the condition of women, we need men to support us. And there are very many feministically oriented men these days who have come forward. In fact, they're more proactive than many women to take this issue and see that women are not discriminated against. Now, my thesis was the impact of underage marriage on the Human Development Index. And what is Human Development Index? That has 3 parameters. One is the life expectancy, level of life expectancy, or level of literacy, and level of living, earnings rather, sorry. So these 3 parameters, literacy, health, and level of earnings. Now, if a woman gets married below the age of 18, that's considered underage marriage as of now. That there's a lot of controversy going on, and there's another bill which is going to be introduced in the parliament on raising the marriage age of women to 21. That's another issue, that's another question. But as of now, 18 is considered, age below which if you marry, then it's considered underage marriage. And the most interesting fact, is that many women, many in the sense almost 45% of women in India are getting married below the age of 18. Now, if a woman gets married below the age of 18, she's shortchanged totally on these three counts. What will be her life expectancy? What will be her literacy? She cannot study, once she gets married, and her health will deteriorate because she has to bear children. She has to take care of so many other things in the household. And then what will be her level of earnings? Because she's not trained to earn that way. So she is shortchanged on these three counts. So this was my thesis, which I presented in Berlin a long time back. But then when you convert this thing into a book, you cannot present a book to get across with the point in a soft manner through literature. The idea was to get across to people about this socioeconomic fact that exists in society through stories, so that they can relate better to the concept. Now, what happens? People read stories on the one hand, and they listen to the news. The news is rife with atrocities on women every other day. Look at Nirbhaya case. Look at there's so many Nirbhayas who have come and gone. Still there's not much of a dent which has been there on this problem of victimization of women, atrocities on women, a lot of abuse on women, which are direct abuse as well as very insidious manner of abuse, in the sense it's kind of hidden, it's kind of, closeted, but then it exists. So this was my thesis. And then when I talked to HarperCollins, they liked the idea so much. They said, yes, we would take the book immediately. They took up this, and there was this interface. These stories about this concept has been reflected in the stories in this book called The Other Woman. So this is the premise. Now, I would speak to you. I will come to the book a little later, but I would first try and tell you that the various sections which I'm going to take up in the narrative. Number one is which I've sent already. Number one is underage marriage. Now, what is underage marriage? What is the degree of underage marriage that exists in India? Then the status of women and the issue of empowerment. Then we come to the issue of patriarchal system. Then gender discrimination, which is universal, by the way. It's just not in India, it is universal, because when I have been to about 15 international conferences where I have presented papers, and people from Norway, by the way, HDI index-wise, Norway is first, number one, whereas India's rank in HDI is 137 out of 156 countries in the world. So, you can imagine, even in Norway, I have a very good friend from Norway who we used to meet at the conferences, and she said apartheid of gender discrimination also exists in Norway, which, by the way, is number one on the HDI index. But of course, the degree is much, much lower. So the thing is, it is an universal phenomenon that women are discriminated even now, the present day. Then the next thing which I'll take up is gender inequality, then Human Development Index, and finally, how women, because of this discrimination, are vulnerable. And the problem of lowering the Human Development Index gets compounded because of this vulnerability and these stories beautifully depict, beautifully explain how, vulnerable they are. What are the different circumstances in which they are placed, and from time to time. And the central point is marriage. Bigamy. Okay. Now here, there's another interesting point which I must tell you, that underage marriage has an overlap with bigamy and polygamy. Why? Because underage marriage, when someone marries bigamy and polygamy, I'll give you the figures also, but maybe I'll not give you so many figures. It'll to boggle you down. But then I have figures to support that bigamy and polygamy, multi-monogamy, you can call it. I have termed it as multi-monogamy because women in India are in and out of marriages. So many times they get married and divorced, and again, they're taken as a second wife or just another wife. So the point is that this overlap between underage marriage and your bigamy or polygamous marriage. The point is, when a man marries for the second time, most often he takes a younger person as the partner. So underage marriage, this way, underage, I've proven in my book, I'll read out the interview which has been conducted by HarperCollins. They've asked me certain questions. There are moot points. There are uncertainties. The moot points have been cleared in those interviews. So how underage marriage has an overlap with bigamy and polygamy. In simple terms, when a person marries for the second time, he takes a younger wife, younger person. So now this is the central theme of the book. That is how underage marriages and bigamous and polygamous marriages reduce women to a very already vulnerable position. Now, you would ask me, how do you say that there's so many marriages taking place in India? Now, as of now, there are 223 million underage marriages in India, which is half the population of Australia and double the population of Singapore. Now, look at the dimension. Already we are 1.3 billion population, which is the demographic dimensions are huge. Now, anything that you look at, the demography of Indian, and especially Indian women, you'll find that it exceeds the total number of people existing in various countries of the world. Like one example I've given you, that 223 million are underage, married underage in India. Now, if you consider the world scenario, women constitute more than 2/3 of the world's illiterate. Now, I just talked about India. Now, look at the world situation. 2/3 of the population of the population of the world are illiterate, and they're women. Now, another figure, just to give you an idea, refugees, 80% of the world's refugees are women. Now look at the real deplorable, situation in which women are placed, not just in India, but in the whole world. Look at, you must be watching TV every other day. Look at the condition of the women in Afghanistan. My heart just cries out it's so very pathetic. Not only in Afghanistan, you have Syria, you have many other countries where women have been discriminated against. They are being discriminated as even now to the present day. Now, I feel very strongly about it, and I have been voicing my opinion through, I call myself an academic activist, not an activist in the sense of working on the ground level as such. I would want to do that, but then for certain reasons, it's not possible. But academic activist, I voiced my opinion against this kind of discrimination that is happening, not just in India, throughout the world. I would not bog you down with too many figures, and also I would go to other things that we can discuss. Now, half of India's women, you know, I also put these figures as a 50% syndrome. Half of India's women are illiterate. Half of India's population do not get potable water, and women, of course, you know, are the central thing in there. Then half of the women do not have bank accounts. So you have so many parameters that would indicate to you how women are at the receiving end of these kind of things. Now, rate of crime. Look at the rate of crime rates. Crime rates have really gone up over the years. I mean, strange that despite all the governmental intervention, despite all the NGOs which are working towards ameliorating the condition of women, crime rates are going up in many states, especially in the northern states. Not only in many other states apart from the northern states. Of course, now they're going for elections, and you would get reports of kind of crimes that would happen. Now look at Delhi. 92% of women in Delhi have reported, this is a crime report, have reported sexual and physical violence in public places in the capital city, Delhi. Now, I would again take up Delhi for another thing, that the sex ratio in India, the sex ratio was 940 to 1,000. Now, of course, now something positive has happened. The sex ratio has gone up to 1020, which means more number of women than men. But all these years, if you look at the history, I mean, historical tracing, if you do, all these years, it was men, the number of men were more than the number of women. It's the first time in 2021 that it has been estimated that the births, the number of girls, maybe because of the fact that infanticide has gone down so far as women are concerned. Earlier, women were being killed at birth, and those who survived did not survive beyond the 5th year of their existence. I mean, these things have come down, which is a good thing that has happened. But nevertheless, a lot remains to be done. Their condition is not really, good in that way. Now, there's another interesting fact that McKinsey has, come about with. The McKinsey, a famous company in the US, says that if we have gender equality in terms of having equal opportunity for men and women, then meaning that if women are also given equal opportunity like men, the GDP would go up multifold times. And it is in the figure has also been given here, 700 billion US dollars, in the year, by the year 2025, which is not far away, far off. So the gender equality can really help to raise the socioeconomic condition of women, and as well as, I mean, the GDP of the country. Now, when I say HDI of the country, the HDI index indicates or shows the socioeconomic health of a country. So if women are, the point is, if women are given equal opportunities to take part in, the participation rates in labor force goes up. If they are given other kind of facilitations regarding their health and education, then they would be contributing to the GDP growth, gross development product, that indicates the situation, the economic situation of a country. So these things one has to, I'm just trying to develop the context before we go on to the stories and conclude about the whole thing. The context is, as I told you earlier, is integral to the to the narrative, which I'm going to take up eventually. Now, there are in the post-COVID. Coming back again to the underage marriage, some of you must be knowing that during COVID, underage marriages have not only gone up in India, but in the UK. Can you imagine a developed country like UK, where underage marriage went up even during COVID times? You see? So, I mean, this is a phenomenon one has to reckon with. I mean, this is not something which we can, take up lightly. It has its repercussions. It has its impact on the country, on all of us. So, underage marriage, I feel very strongly about because the woman is shortchanged. 40% of the world's, child marriages take place where? Take place in India. 40% of the child marriages of the whole world happen in India alone. Now, there's an interesting thing which has been taken up by is being considered by the government to registration of, the bill is being introduced, but there's some delay in that. That is registration of child marriages. And another interesting fact is that one can annul the annulment of a marriage. If someone is married, a young girl, she can annul her marriage, that she can cancel that marriage. That's the power which can be given to them, and then child marriages can be brought down. The rate of child marriages can be brought down. But this, unfortunately, has not, been taken up. The bill has not been passed. The bill has been placed, but it has not been passed. Now, another interesting thing is that women in India, we have been discussing this topic for a long time now. That is decriminalization of, liaisons, of love relationships, live-in relationships. So decriminalization, that bill is also, that has been, in fact, that has been passed, but that it has not been taken, but there's a lot of debate going on whether it is good or bad. There are two sides to it, the flip side and otherwise. So these are the things which are happening in India. All these things you would find, and when I read out the stories, portions of the stories and discuss the stories, you would, they would have a bearing on the thing which we are trying to show, trying to discuss. Now, another thing which we need to keep in mind is the gender parity, which what has happened to gender parity over the years. You've heard of the Beijing platform. You've heard about the UN taking up initiatives, but what exactly, what progress has been made over the years? There have been, there's so many, even in India, we have this Beti Bachao program and the CEDAW law, and but how much progress has been made, that is for us to see. And through these stories which have a contemporary relevance, these stories are not just stories, they are a reality check. These things are happening even now. That is the most crucial thing about it, that these are happening even now. And women are in a very, very vulnerable situation. And we need to, each of us who are the right-thinking people like this group, or many other right-thinking people, can take it up and, maybe there would be some dent on this this menacing, I would call it a menacing problem that we are faced with. Now the next, I would now come to the stories. I'm sure you would be waiting to go through some portions. There's one story which was posted by Mohini. She said she wanted, she's so organized. I'm so impressed with her. She said, no, we must just send me the stories so that, people go through it and they have a briefing. Now, I would like to just read out some portions. Now that you have the background, so you would be able to relate to it better. Now, Chinta is a story written by the famous writer. I mean, her birthday was a couple of days back. Her birthday was celebrated. Mahasweta Devi, the award-winning writer. It was among them, there were many women. Their women rented rooms and set up homes. They took up jobs in various houses, either as part-time or full-time maids. And we are all used to it. These kind of things. It was among them that I saw Chinta for the first time. Short, fair, wearing broad silver bangles and a tattooed chain round her neck. She had tied a cord around her little daughter's waist as she worked in my neighbor's house. The lady of the house was rather finicky. She just could not tolerate the sight of the frail 2-year-old trailing her mother from room to room as she worked. The girl's presence had agitated me as well. Such a thin girl sitting in the dust of the portico, illness had given her a wizened look. Her big eyes lacked curiosity. She just sat there with a lot of fatigue, forgiveness, and patience. The boys and girls of the locality derisively regarded her as a target of fun. A sort of bestial curiosity and the irrepressible, cruel desire to torment the weak made their small faces appear so strange. I could not blame them either. Tender emotions such as sympathy and affection had reached a state of bankruptcy. The curse of living together was that some people ended up hating each other intensely. Young children bore the brunt of the loveless relationships of the elders. They aged rapidly, compelled to bear the corpse of the moribund relationships. So Chinta's daughter, and looking at Chinta, I asked, isn't she getting hurt? You have tied your child like that at the waist. Chinta replies, I have to work, sir. Saying these words, Chinta looked at me like a beast with no sign of protest on her face. She cleaned heaps of utensils and ground large portions of spices. In the afternoon, I watched her return home, carrying her daughter. Her wet sari clung to her body and attracted vulgar stares of the Bihari panwala. As I watched her slow walk, I realized that another child was on its way to being a companion of the malnourished child now in Chinta's arms. Later, I could not stop myself from asking, don't you have anyone at home? Can't you leave your daughter behind at home? I have no one, sir. She had no one. She could have to bear the burden of the frail girl as well as the one to be born. I mean, these kind of stories are very usual stories, but then the way they have been depicted, brings out the vulnerability of these, women, a large section of the women. We are probably the privileged section who might not have faced all these difficulties in life, but there are a large section of women who are going through these kind of pain throughout their life. Chinta's second daughter arrived in the midst of all this. The other maids from Chinta's group informed me Chinta had lost her 8 rupee job. She had to pawn her silver bangles for 10 rupees. The other maids were urging her to borrow money from them in exchange of her brass utensils. They speculated Chinta would never be able to pay them back and get back her utensils. Then this man married her, but then she was deserted. She wept as she narrated further. Suddenly, around that time, Utsav arrived at a village from Calcutta. Utsav was good looking. He kept making promises to Chinta initially. Chinta remained unperturbed. She kept her door locked. Then Utsav won over little Gopal, that is her son. He bought sweets for the child. He played with the child and spoke pleasantly to him. Gradually, Chinta's heart softened on Utsav. Abruptly halting her flow of reminiscences, Chinta remarked, "Errant youth and bodily desires overcame me. I became a sinner." The villagers resented their intimacy. Chinta was scared of her relatives, scared for her son, scared of even handing pan and supari to Utsav. Utsav stood by her. He declared he would marry Chinta. He would give her earrings, necklace, and new bangles. To begin with, people might talk. So it would be better to leave Gopal behind and go to Calcutta. They would get married there and then return to the village. How could Chinta run a household without a man? Chinta said, "When he promised to marry me, I accepted him." Then Utsav brought her to Calcutta. Fearing that her brass utensils might get stolen in her absence, she carried them along with her. What followed was an age-old tale. Fearing that her brass utensils might get stolen in her absence, she carried them along with her. What followed was an age-old story. Chinta was not aware of it. He escaped after ruining me. He did not marry me, nor did he give me any jewelry. Instead, he beat me up, took my money, and disappeared after giving me 2 kids. I asked, "Can you go back to the village now?" Chinta answered, "I have my own field. My pond is full of fish. Then why don't you go back?" That's where the problem lay. She had sinned, so she would have to do penance by spending 200 rupees. She would have to treat the village folks to a full meal. Moreover, she would have to abandon her 2 daughters. Where will I get so much money, Ma? As I shall never be able to procure so much money, I will never be able to return to my village. Those who had arrived today were the leaders of a village, her uncle-in-law and his son. I mean, the rest of the story is for us to guess. I mean, what would have happened to her eventually. So, I mean, these are the various kinds of stories. And if you read the blurb of the book at the back, we don't have constraint of time. We cannot read out more stories, but I would roughly just read out the blurb. So Manorama's many men, in one of the stories, Manorama is the central character. Manorama's many men abandon her the day she falls in love with one man. I mean, it was fine for all these men. Manorama used to sell pan and tea at a wayside shop. And it was fine for all these men, so long as she did not fall in love with any particular man. So she was available for all of them. But once she falls in love with one man, then, I mean, they abandon her. Maganlal Daruwala initiates Sardabai into prostitution and becomes the richest bidder for first nights to her daughter, granddaughter, and great-granddaughter. I mean, these, we might call it fiction, but these are actually realities. I mean, they are, I mean, I have first-hand account of these things when I did a survey in certain quarters. A tribal girl frees Randhir of all inhibitions. in a sexual encounter. A man surrenders his body to an older woman as a visitor from home brings along Suniti's little secret from the past, thus shattering the calm of a married life. So Suniti was a little girl who had a liaison when she was young. And after that, she got married and was comfortably settled with her new husband, with her husband. But then somebody from the past, of a past life, drops in, and then he threatens her. I mean, he sort of not threatens her. It's sort of blackmails her into and she finally her marriage gets shattered. She had a very peaceful, very loving husband, a very peaceful kind of arrangement after marriage, but then it all gets shattered because of this, the entry. It's called, the name of the story is Visitor. Now I would I'm sure Mohini, with Mohini's permission, I would read out some questions that were posed to me by HarperCollins. It was kind of an interview in the book. The book actually contains 16 stories, pan-Indian, and an interview of mine by HarperCollins. So HarperCollins asks me, do you think these stories reflect a social problem? Are they still relevant in the 21st century? These stories do reflect a grave social problem. My answer is, these stories do reflect a grave social problem. The problem briefly is of shortchanging women, which definitely has its adverse impact on the socioeconomic status of women in general. Girls are often reduced to being seasonal brides and almost always return home in a year or less, abandoned by the groom, impregnated and having no forwarding address for the in-laws. But the offense of bigamy is non-cognizable, and hence a number of bigamous marriages go unchallenged. The problem is not only relevant in the 21st century, but I should say more relevant now than before. Another, there are so many questions, but I would, due to constraint of time, I would just go through some of the questions posed to me. So the next question.
Monica, yes. If I may suggest, why don't you tell us about one more story? All right, the theme.
Yeah,
and sure. Allow the group to ask the questions.
So I should go through one more story?
Yeah, I mean, so would it be the offspring? The
offspring, yes.
Stories.
Offspring.
One of
One
the
day in the offspring. Yeah, the offspring has been written by this author Indira Goswami. She's from Assam, and she was so kind when I asked her to give me a story for this ensemble of stories. And this, so she wrote this story specifically for this book, and I was really touched. She's no more, but she was a particular friend of mine. She's Indira Goswami from Assam. So the story is titled Offspring, The Offspring. One day in the middle of the night, Damayanti woke up with a start, disturbed by sounds coming from the backyard, as if someone was digging the earth. Alarmed and frightened, she woke up her elder daughter. Both strained their eyes. Yes, there were distinct sounds of digging coming from the direction of the bamboo grove behind the house. That was the very spot where both mother and daughter had some nights before they dug a pit for the aborted child. Yes, that was the night when both mother and daughter had been terrified by the frequent howling of the jackals. The daughter holding the earthen lamp while Damayanti dug with a crowbar and scooped out the loose earth with nervous hands. They carefully opened the window and looked out. They saw a man digging in the dim light of a lantern hung from the bamboo tree nearby. Was it Pitambar? Yes, it was really him. He was digging the earth with single-minded determination. The Mahajan's whole body and face assumed a terrible expression. He dug and clawed the earth frantically with frenzied energy. Damayanti's body started trembling from head to foot. Her heart beat violently. What should she do? Should she shout? Should she keep quiet? Mahajan, Mahajan, there was no response. Why are you digging, Mahajan? Pitambar looked up but did not reply. Damayanti became frantic. She shouted furiously, what will you get there? Yes, I have buried it. It was a boy, but he's just a lump of flesh, blood and mud. Stop it. Pitambar raised his head. His eyes were burning. I'll touch the flesh with those hands of mine. He was the scion of my lineage, a part of my flesh and blood. I will touch him. So these are very touching tales of, women in difficult circumstances. And but the spirit of Indian women, I would always, they are raring to go. It's not that, they are just, very, very sort of weak and they can be dismissed. It's nothing like that. They have, I really admire the spirit of Indian women. They rise up like a phoenix when it comes to that. And okay. I would just read out a poem by Sarojini Naidu, who sort of comes out with this beautiful depiction of the spirit of women of India. Honey child, whither are you going? Would you cast your jewels all to the breezes blowing? Would you leave the mother who on golden grain has fed you? Would you grieve the lover who is riding forth to wed you? Mother mine, to the wild forests I'm going, where upon the champa boughs the champa buds are blowing, to the coal-haunted river isles where lotus lilies glisten, the voices of the fairy folk are calling me, oh listen. Honey child, the world is full of pleasure, of bridal songs and cradle songs and sandal-scented leisure. Your bridal robes are in the loom, silver and saffron glowing. Your bridal cakes are on the hearth. Oh, whither are you going? The bridal song, the child replies. The bridal songs and the cradle songs have cadences of sorrow. The laughter of the sun today, the wind of death tomorrow. Far sweeter sound the forest notes where forest streams are falling. Oh, mother mine, I cannot stay, the fairy folk are calling. So the young women are raring to go. They're not just, they don't just cling to the idea of getting married. The mother cajoles her into getting married and she tempts her by saying it's full of pleasure, this and that. But she has her independent spirit where, she's raring to go and she wants to dismiss the idea of marriage for some time to go and explore the wide world. So should I?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Monica. Can I request everyone now to please switch on their video screens and unmute? And you're most welcome to join in a conversation with Monica. Yes. So Monica, now you said that you were talking about the indomitable spirit of India. But I have to confess, I don't see it. In these stories, I think the women are helpless, they're desperate. There is such hypocrisy and such double standards in society. Where is the spirit? I'm sure that there are stories where spirit is depicted, but not in these ones, not these three that you've given us that we have looked at. So what I wanted to say was, of course, I don't think any literary text would be unique theme, like it would not have only one theme. So yes, of course, the situation of women is a theme, but in The Offspring, it seems to me that the story shows us that the only value that women have is their ability to bear. And I'm not even saying children, their ability to bear sons, because the men are only interested in sons. Like Pitambar says, he is the scion of my lineage, right? So he has had a son, but this wretched woman has decided not to marry him, but to abort the child. And I found it very interesting that this particular woman, Damayanti, is so hung up about her caste because she's a high caste person and Pitambar belongs to a lower caste than her. I just wonder, would you like to say something about that? I mean, given the helplessness of her situation, can she afford this kind of caste elitism?
Excuse me, I'd like to say something, but I can't switch on my video. This is Mukul.
Okay, yes, Mukul.
Yeah, even if I try to switch it on from here, it's not getting through. Okay. Yeah. Monica ji and Mohini, I just finished reading the entire stories that were sent to me. And for this question of Mohini's, I'd like to say that I thought of a little insidious thing. I thought Damayanti had to survive. And in fact, she and the other, not the Mahajan, I forget his name, Krishna Kanta, or what's his name? The Pandit.
Krishna Kanta is the Pandit.
Pandit. No, that is Pitambar. Not he, not whose child it is. The other one who brought her here, it's there. They are in league and we don't even know whether it's a boy. To make him happy, they say it's a boy. It need not even be a boy because she's already married.
That's right. That's right.
All these could actually be different, guises or ways, insidious ways that women use to just survive. And that money could have been split between Damayanti and Krishna Kanta is what I thought, Yeah. I didn't think it was so straightforward that Pitambar needs a male heir and she is to give him the male heir. And then she says it has died and he just goes there just to touch it. That's a possibility. But he would not know that, and it could just be anything. And because the Damayanti knew that so much is being said about her. Now you're a prostitute, now you're this, now you're that. And also, Monica ji, in every story you've chosen the helpless, sort of not illegitimate, but just leftover children of legitimate marriages or non-legitimate girls. Even in the previous story, Chinta, the two children, the one just born and the little girl who's tied with the cord are daughters. And even in this, it's girls. It's never boys who are, I found this very remarkable from the point of view of how would these women, if they had their liaisons and then had boys from them, how would it have been different? Would it have been qualitatively different?
But what about Gopal? I mean, she had that boy.
Yes, much Gopal. Later. Yeah. There's just one case. I was going to make it. Say that as
yes, Monica, go ahead.
But
and then
like Mukulji, rightly pointed out, the spirit, the survival instinct, the survival spirit is what is shown here. I mean, it comes out loud and clear. I mean, also she has to survive. I mean, whatever it is.
That's my point.
So. The spirit is always there, and she takes the brunt. The woman takes the brunt of all the,
Absolutely.
But she manages to survive.
Yeah.
Okay. Shall we have Vispi? Vispi, you raised your hand. Would you like to chime in?
Yes, I did. I know that because of the shortage of time, Monica didn't take up the story that I appreciated, Mrinmoy. And particularly the way in which it ends.
Yes.
Because I thought here she showed her own strength when she refuses to go and collect this award that her husband has been philandering.
Yeah. That's a beautiful story. That's a
very beautiful.
I like that. Yeah.
And being an artist, he thought he had this freedom to go about looking for beautiful women and all that. And initially, she is naive. He just brings her from the village, and she wonders what he sees in her and all that. But eventually, I think she comes out strong.
Yes.
And, and I just made this note about the way in which it ends. If you permit me to just read that bit. She has placed boundaries of morality and immorality around herself. And she is happy within these boundaries. She does not understand his concept of bliss, nor his talk of beauty. So I want to ask the readers, what is your view on the way in which she looks at it and the way she is happy to go by her sense of morality? So I was impressed by the way it ends.
Yeah, that's a very good debating point, raises. Yeah, so who would like to offer their opinions here? Yes, anybody?
I'd like to say something.
Yes, please.
But that's if nobody else, we have the time and nobody else. I love the way it ended because it is just that little elbow room that a woman makes for resistance where she can't do anything. It reminded me of Color Purple, where she spits into the jar of or the glass of water to give it to the guy, the bullier or whoever he was, so, and then she takes it to him when she's supposed to serve. So this is where she says, I'm his wife, but I'm not going to go and collect the award in his place. So this creating this space where they can resist is what I liked very much. Otherwise, I didn't know what was happening right throughout the story. I didn't understand why it was so great or but lovely ending.
Yeah. So she puts up her, takes a stand. That's what is important to note.
Yeah,
that she
could have
taking
crumbled.
a stand. She's not just succumbing to all his pressures.
She could have crumpled, all those comments from other people. Sheena, would you like to say something? I know you've read the stories.
I read the stories. The two of them, my heart became very cold when I read them, especially the part where Chinta has to, first of all, with a name like Chinta, she's already doomed, right? Because her name is Chinta. So I just felt, when she sold her daughters for 2 rupees and 4 rupees or something, it was just as though she's selling something in the market. It was just so, I don't know whether it was an act of desperation, helplessness, resignation, and she just did it and she just felt that now she can move on, And the last part of this, what is the story? The Offspring, the last story in the book. Yeah, this guy going and digging the corpse of his unborn child. I just feel that he became unhinged at the end because he was so desperate, and he ended up giving all his money to the priest and to this woman. And then finally he says, now I can touch this half Brahmin unborn child, since I was not allowed to, hold him in my arms. Now I can at least touch him. So that's what I thought. But they really put a chill in my heart. I know we see all these.
Isn't he validating? Yeah, he's
validating what?
We see this in the movie.
Validating his own masculinity.
Yeah, but the fact that
because he's had 2 wives and he hasn't had any children. And now he has had a child, not only a child, but a male child. He needs to know that. He needs to have the proof of it. So, the value system that is so entrenched in our society.
And I find it more chilling is that Monica says that these things actually happen. And they
actually happen. They happen.
These stories are quite old, right?
Yeah, it's quite old, but it's all relevant even to the present day because it has a lot of contemporary relevance. And if you read stories, as I was saying, in Afghanistan, in the present day, right now, there's a channel, most of you must be looking at that channel, Beyond. It sort of depicts all these stories in a very different manner. Like I said in the beginning, people read stories and people watch news, and which is rife with all these kinds of things, but they do not relate, that kind of a thing. So these things happen, but then they take it as a news, and then stories are stories. But actually, these are all reality check kind of, and And so many ways of, and when you read fiction, you can interpret it in so many ways. It's your imagination, your creativity that comes to the fore. Like, for example, what's her name? Sheena? Yeah. Sheena just pointed out about Mrinmai. No, sorry, The Offspring. And then she says Pitambar wants to hold the child. So maybe if you interpret it from another angle, from the woman's angle, so it could be a kind of vendetta that she is having on Pitambar for his negligence of her. So it could also be like that, because women, once they, they decide to sort of take a revenge or bring it out on someone who has wronged them, it could.
Well, and they must find their own way.
There are two people who want to speak.
Yes.
Yes.
Who are they?
Tazeen wants to speak.
I wanted to say that there's a good possibility that it wasn't Pitambar's child at all.
That's what I said in the beginning.
Yeah. So that way, the vendetta theory,
Yeah. And the whole idea of him having two wives and not having any children.
Mm-hmm.
So it may well be a plot not only for money, but to exploit this Mahajan chap. No?
Yeah.
So, and in that sense, Monica, what you said in the end was true. In that sense, she shows a spiritedness. That I've got the money, but I won't give you the child.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, Monica, I didn't feel right from the beginning that it was his child at all. It was just a ploy used by this lady Damayanti, again a survival tactic, along with that Kanta, whatever.
Krishna Kanta.
Yeah.
So there you are, your erudite people come out with your own creative thinking regarding the story and reinterpreting. So lovely.
But that's what the book club is for.
Beautifully in that story. From a simple girl walking so many steps behind him when they first see her. And then she starts wearing nicer clothes and she gets confident. And then she has confidence enough to reject that award.
Yes.
That I thought was a terrific growth.
She's taking a stand. She's taking a stand. Yeah. So that's what when I read out this poem, I think with that, the saying to show how the spirit of Indian women is indomitable, and the spirit is something which, where they are raring to go. If you watch this Sony channel, you will find there's a kind of investment thing that, Flipkart, where so many women in the ground level, the rural areas, they are being helped carrying out their own business and surviving on their own. So this is something very nice, very positive that one observes, despite the fact that a lot more needs to be done for uplifting and for ameliorating the condition of women in India.
I think, Moini, I think Aruna wants to say something.
Yes, Aruna, please. Can we have your views? And other people, you're welcome to put on your videos, folks. Even if you're not speaking, let us see your expression at least. When you
Aruna, please switch on. Please switch on your, there you are.
There are women who have been deserted and women who are, they don't know what to do with the children born, give for adoption, could be male. Many have given male boy. They have given their boys for adoption. So, but I think what we need is that men should be corrected. It's the men who are always at fault because of putting women in such a predicament. All these problems arise because of the wrong training given to the men.
Yeah. So this takes me to a program which we conducted in, program in the sense academic program of sensitizing. In fact, I have an article on sensitization of men in ameliorating the condition, like Nirbhaya case is so ruthless. It has not ended. It's just continuing. Every other day so how can you put up with all this? That means that we need to do something very, very, adopt corrective measures. And the most so useful method is sensitizing the men, and it should start from home.
One more thing I want to point out, that it also is, woman's status is related to the area, to the location. For example, in North India, it's different. The status of woman is different in Haryana, different in Punjab, different in UP. In UP, there is a lot of polygamy. And as you go northwards, among the sub-Himalayan region, there is polyandry. And a woman will have, I think it's written by one of the people you have quoted, that a woman can be pregnant so many times and loses all her health. And of course, as far as Shweta Devi is concerned, she writes basically about tribals and things like that, and things. I was lucky to meet her in Pune when she had come, and anyway, that's a different story. Didn't interview her though.
Wow. Okay.
Very good.
Yeah. And I also am interested in anthropology, sociology, though I have also been teaching economics all my life.
Oh, where were you teaching, madam?
At the Gargi College, where Mohini Khoth was there.
Oh, I see. Colleagues. I see.
And see, I am a Sindhi, so we have a different set of a woman, where woman is considered as a kind of a person who should not bow down. And in Maharashtra, the women do bow down to their mothers, fathers, whereas we don't. We say, Nyani, you are like a Brahmin. You should not bow down to us. At the same time, a woman is not allowed to move around freely. This was long time ago, but no longer. No longer women are all entrepreneurs traveling everywhere. The situation, because it's related to education and a certain kind of a support system. So there are many factors that contribute. It's not like a simple thing that there are social taboos. They vary geographically. For example, I was told something, Mohini Khoth only had discussed that program about the conditions among the Nayars in South, written by a person over there, very well-known man, I forget the name, and where a woman, in spite of the, what you call, not like North India, where a woman's status is supposed to be higher than a woman in South, and in spite of their Tarwar systems and other systems, women were exploited in detail. They were exploited to no end. Like they could be taken over by the headman anytime. So, and that was a practice, I suppose so.
Yeah, and the so-called matriarchal system did not protect
them. And they have them. And Tarwar systems, especially the Nayars. But in spite of that, being having a higher status, because the inheritance is through a woman, the woman was available freely. She was not available, but she was forced to be available. Forced to be available freely.
Okay. So anyone else?
It all depends on so many factors, which I think many of these note. Anyway, these are all fiction. Yes? Sorry.
No, I was about to ask, Latika, Latika, I see you there. You haven't said anything about this. And,
no, I just feel
Latika, that... I have Rekha Deshmukh also is here. So both of you would like your comments on that.
My comment will be short. I just feel that the problem is not only socioeconomic or educational or health. it's much broader. It involves the justice system. It involves the administrative system. It involves the police. I think it involves too many areas of our society, too many facets of our society. And to feel that a girl is educated and therefore she is now free is not necessarily true. Although we are moving ahead, and I think we're moving ahead quite well, because social change always takes time. It has been faster in the 20th century than in earlier centuries. But in a place like Maharashtra, we had very many forward-looking women who were really upheld the cause of women in very, very different and very important ways, whether it was social or writing or activism or whatever it is, looking after children, bringing up. Recently, this lady who died,
Saptal.
Sindhutai.
Kind of, so we've had that tradition in Maharashtra. And yet we are fighting something that is really beyond us at the moment, because after all, India had one of the first countries to have a woman leader, Indira Gandhi. I think Golda Meir was the other one. I don't know who else. Then afterwards we had someone
in Australia. We have
Australia now. Australia now. All these countries are now. We had it 40 years ago.
Correct.
So in that sense, we were quite. We had gone far ahead.
Well, India is full of paradoxes.
We are. Agree with that.
Two steps ahead, one step back. Two steps ahead, one step back.
And it's a multiple reality.
It's a multiple. Yes, absolutely.
And the mindset, basically, when Latika ji spoke, I mean, a lot more. I mean, you can attribute other things. So basically, the mindset of the people have to change. It's a social conditioning, socio-cultural conditioning, which has been there for years, and that takes a long time to change. But with all these interventions, probably we could speed up the process. And I mean, there would be takeaways from this. I'm sure people have responded so well. I'm so glad people have come out.
I think Sheena has still something to say.
Oh, yeah, please go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that the 3 stories gave you so much of food for thought that I am like dying to read the other 13 stories.
Yeah, please.
And I just wanted to ask, I'm so glad I got the book. I just want to ask you why you chose these 3 stories over the 16? Was there a reason for selecting these 3 stories to speak on today?
Yeah, it has to. Yeah, of course, because as I told you right in the beginning, the central theme was underage, the impact of underage marriages on the Human Development Index, or the socioeconomic status of women. So, that theme had to fit in. All these stories had to fit in with the theme. So I sat in libraries, in Delhi libraries, and Central Secretary, and Ravindra Bhavan, and so many other libraries. And took me 3 years to select these stories, which kind of, toe the line of the central theme of.
I think Sheena's question was, why did you choose these 3 for discussion today?
Oh, these 3, yeah, okay.
Yes.
Because we possibly can't, take up all the stories. So I have just, random. It's a random kind of selection.
Okay.
Before I give it to anyone else, I would request, can I give my opinion on this?
Please,
I think...
Yes, I was waiting for your opinion, Mr.
I think we have created this problem for ourselves. It's not just the men, but men have been groomed by their mothers to be what they are, rather than the other way around. And
well,
we have one minute. And that is why we have this problem where you put the man or the boy on a higher pedestal, and that's how he thinks from the very beginning. He gets a bigger share of the meal than the girl gets, even though if the girl is more educated or etc., that still happens around. There are a lot of these things happen which will, unless we get out of it, it doesn't. And more than anything else, I always feel it is the mother-in-law which carries this idea through, or the mothers which carry the idea through, because in India there's a tendency for the father not to be involved in the growing up kids, and it's the mother who has to do things which may change. In fact, if you, just a little going off this we had PC at this thing at Canada, we have a system where we are trying to encourage people in the economically weaker section, the women there, to start reading. Because we hope that reading will open up minds rather than watching television or rather than watching the priest or mullah or the padri to give a call and talk about their thing. And the worst is television, which has abysmal way of presenting what a family should be.
Very regressive.
Very regressive. So regressive. My thing is, if women have to take it up and make it a point that, look, we have this thing, yes, we'll move ahead. There's a lady down here. Where is she? Rekha. Aruna. Aruna and Mohini are from St. Mira's. And St. Mira's, from the very beginning that I first met anyone from there, was that they want to empower women. And like we also quietly like to empower women. This, not just Gyanadam, but also St. Mira's were the original people which started doing this. Okay, I talk too much, etc. Rekha, last minute you.
I just want to thank Monica, for giving this entire discussion on her book. And I was with her when she was scouting for Marathi story. And I do remember very fondly the making of this book, and our discussions during those times. And about patriarchy and cultural aspect of, problems of women. In my opinion, I'm a counselor, so I think it is up to the women to look after themselves, when they get enlightened, at least they should look for themselves and should not think that I have to be a doormat. If every woman can think like that in those terms, then this problem will be gone forever. But as Satish has said that women are grooming men, so that part is also true. I can't deny that. And somehow, it is a complex situation. So every family is different. Every upbringing of the children are different. And cultural shackles, when we have to break, then only the woman will be free forever. So we are going towards that goal inch by inch, but it is still there. Thank you very much.
I just want to quickly say one thing, that your women are ruining men. Please, this is the patriarchal system. All right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what
which women have unfortunately internalized. Look at it that way. All right? Their idea. And they're telling you that they are inferior to you. No, it is that the women have very unfortunately internalized that system. So they they become inadvertent propagators, of
Okay, yes. Can I have 1 minute again, please?
Yes, Wispy, go ahead.
Because it's rising out of what Aruna said a little earlier about bowing and not bowing. It reminded me of one of my favorite stories by Mrinal Pandey, written in Hindi but translated, and it's called Girls. And in that story, this 8-year-old is told to touch her nani's feet, and she doesn't bow down properly. And one of the aunts says, bow properly, learn to bow now. You're a girl for the rest of your life. That is what you will have to do. And I think that, in a way, sums up the way in which families bring up their girls.
And that's what I highlighted. It is women itself who try to bring this ideology around. We have to break that. That's what we at Gyanadam believe very strongly in that. I think Farooq also want to say something and more. I think they take after that to wind up now. Okay?
Yes. Yes, Farooq, over to you.
See, I personally feel that where the people are educated, the educated people, here the problem has reduced and will reduce. If you look at the urban areas of India, the problems where there is education and there is a lot of secularism around about, the problems are much, much lesser. In the urban poor region also, it is much lesser in the bastis. And you know, we are conducting these programs in Gyanruchi, and we are taking care of the urban slum basti ladies. By giving them skills and by giving them more exposure, we find that these ladies are really up to the mark. I think the problem would be more in the economically weaker sections, mostly in the slums and the mofussil areas of bigger cities, where these type of old-time headaches still continue to happen. And I think the problem would normally solve by education and by economic growth. And as what I think other people wanted to say is that basically in any family unit, it is the woman who is actually the main person. They say if you educate a woman, the whole family gets educated.
Yes.
With the man, then only his skills increase, probably they are economically better. And it takes probably a 3 to 4 generation before you realize that, and we have seen even in the freedom movement, when you see so many of the women freedom fighters, their fathers have brought them forward, and they have emulated their fathers and parents. I was reading a book, story on Kulsum Shahani. Her father herself brought her forward into the freedom fight, into the freedom movement. So I think it's India maybe having 40% of that, whatever problem you spoke in the end. But as India goes ahead and forward, I think with education, I think with economic growth, things should improve as people get more, even this COVID has brought people together by Zoom and all. The world has become a smaller place. And people are getting more exposed. I mean, people will hesitate to do things probably what they did 25 years ago in India. So I think it's a matter of time and education. This is what I felt.
Correct.
Very true, very true. And everyone who can must nudge others forward, not just keep their enlightenment to themselves, but to share it and to encourage others and show the way so that we get there that much faster.
If nothing, just carry home the concern, and people say, what can I single-handedly do? I mean, but you can cause ripples. You throw a stone in by way of voicing your opinion. You generate ripples, and that ultimately helps in making the necessary changes in society.
Absolutely, because every individual comes into contact with so many people in a time. And if he can communicate a little of these progressive beliefs to these people, then you're nudging everyone forward.
I think Mona Lisa, she has to quickly say something. Mona Lisa, quickly come on. And
yes.
Where are you?
Mona Lisa Mohanty, would you like to say something? She's put a message in the chat box. Mona Lisa, yes, would you like to say something?
Say something.
Yes, to unmute. Mona Lisa, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, I think I know her, Mona Lisa.
Mona Lisa, please.
I'm unable to.
Go ahead.
No, actually, I heard something. I came a little later. Sorry for that. But I just made few points in the chat box itself. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, go on.
About somebody was talking about women themselves are also part of this system.
Propagators of the patriarchal system.
Yeah. So they are the conveners of many systems that is being imposed on other women. So to deal with this issue is not just women going together, also taking men folk who are progressive, taking them along is very much, I think, inevitable. Because if we make it more women versus men, because that is something which is also like there are many men who hold very progressive ideas too. So we have to identify them and take them along. It should not be confined to the women,
oh, yes.
speaking about women itself. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, yes, indeed. Okay, I think we should wind up now. It's almost 8 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mona Lisa. Thank you, Monica. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you all for listening. And it was real pleasure being here. Thank you.
We having you.
And
Dr. Rekha.
Satish ji, everybody. Thank you all. It was a real pleasure.
Farooq, do you want to say?
Our pleasure.
Thank you, Farooq ji.
Okay. Normally you normally talk about it. Moini is frozen.
Okay, there's a lot of voices coming at me suddenly. I don't know what happened. Okay, can I tell you about what is happening next week? Next week, which is the 30th of January, we have Indu Kulkarni talking about the poems of Robert Frost. I think Indu is here today, or was at least.
She was here.
Yes.
She wanted to say something.
That is what we're having. Then on the 6th of February, we're dealing with a play by Eugene O'Neill, The Iceman Cometh, by Prabhanjan Mane will be talking about this. And so onward bound, folks. Let's see you next Sunday.
Okay, I'll just...
Again, Monica, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Everybody who joined in. Thank you so much.
After Farooq, I want to say something also.
Yeah, I just inform about the programs of Gyanadab. This Wednesday, we are having the program on jazz. And the program on jazz is going to be pretty good because we have a very, very sensible person who knows jazz very well. And he's going to be speaking about jazz. What is jazz? How it has affected... Okay, so on 5th, we'll be having a program on eclipses, and that is going to be conducted by Mustafa Lokhandwala. And the following Saturday, we are having a program by Mr. Hassan on Ghalib, and Mukul has been kind enough to arrange that program.
Yeah.
And the last week of February, we are having a program by the waterman of the railways. He's a person from the railways. He has done a lot of work on water farming and things like that. And during the 3rd or 4th week of this, we are having a program on Urdu program, which Nasima is yet to announce. So
okay.
That's from my side.
Right. Satish, did you want a word?
No, no more words. I think that's everything.
I think Farooq said it all. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So everybody should come. it's on Republic Day.
Looks like an interesting program.
Republic Day at 7 o'clock.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, everyone. And
thank you.
Looking at the calendar that we send out every now and then, so that you will know all the programs coming all the way to April. April, we have the Shakespeare celebration. Several people have already said that they will be contributing to this. Those of you who would like to, please contact Satish or me and let us know what you would like to do so that we don't have any overlapping and repetition. Okay? Looking forward to that. Look forward to seeing you next Sunday. Bye, everyone. Thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you.